Welcome, dear friends, to a gentle journey through 120 of the most adorable Pokémon facts. Those heartwarming details about the cutest designs, the most endearing behaviors, the touching relationships between Pokémon and trainers, the precious baby Pokémon whose existence serves no purpose beyond making players smile, the charming quirks that Pokédex entries reveal about how adorable Pokémon interact with their environments and with each other, and the design philosophies that Game Freak employs when creating creatures whose primary function is inspiring protective instincts through strategic deployment of neotenic features that human psychology finds irresistibly appealing. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Are you cozying up somewhere cold where Sfeel would feel at home, or somewhere warm where Torchic would thrive? Drop your location in the comments below, and if you enjoy this adorable exploration of the cutest Pokémon, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss when we explore more soothing Pokémon content. Subscribing really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more of these relaxing deep dives into everything Pokémon. Tonight, we'll explore everything adorable about Pokémon across 3 parts, totaling 120 facts, told gently, like bedtime stories about creatures whose cuteness transcends species boundaries, creating universal appeal that children and adults alike recognize through evolutionary psychology that makes humans respond to features, signaling youth and vulnerability. So settle into comfort, close your eyes whenever sleep beckons, and let us begin this gentle journey through adorable Pokémon facts told soothingly, like tales about the creatures whose primary purpose is making world brighter through existing as concentrated sources of joy. Fact 1. Pikachu's design incorporates almost every feature that psychological research identifies as triggering cuteness response in humans, including large eyes occupying substantial portion of face, round cheeks, suggesting baby fat that adults find endearing, small body with large head, creating proportions that signal youth, and yellow coloration that bright warm colors make cheerful. The strategic deployment of cute features made Pikachu into franchise mascot, whose appeal transcends cultural boundaries through exploiting universal psychological responses that evolution programmed into human cognition for ensuring that adults protect vulnerable young whose survival depends on inspiring care that cuteness evolved to trigger automatically. Fact 2. The red cheek circles on Pikachu serve as electrical sacs that store energy according to Pokédex entries, but their circular shape and rosy color coincidentally resemble blush, creating appearance of perpetual embarrassment that humans find charming through suggesting innocence and vulnerability. The cheek pouches provide functional explanation for design element whose effect is making Pikachu appear perpetually flustered in an endearing way that personality interpretations build upon through treating Pikachu as shy or modest, character whose blushing cheeks suggest emotional transparency that audiences appreciate through seeming authentic and genuine rather than calculating and manipulative. Fact 3. Pichu represents baby Pikachu evolution, whose existence serves primarily to be even cuter than Pikachu through making already cute design smaller and rounder, with proportionally larger ears that flop awkwardly, creating clumsy appearance. The baby form demonstrates principle that cuteness increases through exaggerating neotenic features beyond what adult forms possess, making Pichu's oversized ears and inability to control electrical powers into endearing characteristics that suggest helplessness, requiring protection that adult Pikachu doesn't need, making Pichu more dependent and therefore more deserving of care that vulnerability inspires through triggering, nurturing instincts. Fact 4. The fact that Pichu damages itself when using electrical attacks creates gameplay mechanic that mirrors lore describing how baby Pokémon haven't mastered abilities that evolved forms control effortlessly. The self-damage makes Pichu sympathetic through showing that trying to help despite lacking competence creates situations where good intentions produce harmful outcomes that experience will eventually prevent, but which youth guarantees will occur during learning process. That maturity requires making mistakes that adults protect children from repeating through providing guidance that experience teaches. Fact 5. Togepi's design as Pokémon emerging from egg creates perpetual state of being born that forestalls actual birth indefinitely, making Togepi into eternal infant whose shell prevents full emergence into world. The egg-bound design maximizes helplessness through depicting Pokémon that literally hasn't finished being born, creating ultimate vulnerability that protective instincts respond to through recognizing that partially born creature needs assistance, that complete independence would eliminate making Togepi's design into calculated appeal to nurturing psychology through presenting organism in most defenseless possible state. Fact 6. The shell that Togepi wears is described as filled with happiness that Togepi shares with kind-hearted people, according to Pokédex entries, creating narrative where caring for Togepi produces reciprocal joy, making relationship mutually beneficial. The happiness sharing creates positive feedback loop where protecting Togepi makes protector happy, which increases desire to continue protecting, creating emotional bond that practical considerations alone wouldn't generate, making Togepi into friend rather than burden through providing emotional rewards that effort, investment into care produces through joy that Togepi radiates to caregivers. Fact 7. Jigglypuff's round body resembles balloon, creating soft appearance that huggability suggests through visual design, communicating texture that actual touch would confirm. The balloon-like proportions eliminate sharp angles and eliminate threatening features, making Jigglypuff into safe creature whose roundness suggests softness and gentleness that predatory designs contradict through incorporating angular features, signaling danger that Jigglypuff's design deliberately avoids through maximizing curves that safety and comfort suggest to observers, evaluating threat levels that appearance communicates before actual interaction occurs. Fact 8. The singing ability that Jigglypuff possesses creates nurturing behavior where Jigglypuff performs lullabies for audiences regardless of whether listeners want to sleep, creating compulsion to care for others through providing service that singing represents as gift. The involuntary nature of lullaby that puts listeners to sleep against their will becomes comedic through context, but underlying impulse shows Jigglypuff as caretaker whose instinct is soothing others, even when soothing isn't requested, making Jigglypuff into nurturing presence, whose help sometimes becomes hindrance through excessive kindness that good intentions don't prevent from causing problems. Fact 9. The marker that Jigglypuff carries for drawing on sleeping faces creates iconic image of Jigglypuff's anger at being unappreciated for singing that audiences slept through rather than applauding. The vandalism becomes humorous rather than malicious through being perpetrated by creature too cute to genuinely threaten, making Jigglypuff's revenge into harmless prank that washable marker enables without causing lasting harm, creating comedy through juxtaposition between anger and harmlessness that cute appearance creates when attempting intimidation, that cuteness undermines through making threats adorable rather than frightening. Fact 10. Clefairy's fairy origins and star association create mystical cute design where cuteness combines with magic suggesting that adorable creatures possess supernatural qualities that mundane, cute creatures lack. The fairy typing reinforces connection between cuteness and magic through suggesting that what appears harmless actually possesses power. That appearance conceals, creating beneficial deception, where cute exterior provides protection through making opponents underestimate capabilities that Clefairy's fairy magic provides, despite looking too adorable to be threatening, creating strategic advantage that cuteness enables through disarming suspicion. Fact 11. The finger wiggling that Clefairy performs as signature move metronome creates charming animation where stubby arms wave, creating image of Clefairy concentrating intensely on magic, whose effects are random, making Clefairy into chaos. Agent whose finger wiggling might produce any result. The unpredictability combined with earnest finger waving creates comedy through showing Clefairy trying hard to perform magic without knowing what magic will occur, creating gap between intention and outcome that chance determines, making metronome into perfect move for creature whose cuteness derives partly from apparent incompetence that randomness represents. Fact 12. Chansey's design as nurse Pokémon, whose egg-carrying pouch contains nutritious eggs that it shares with injured Pokémon, creates ultimate caretaker whose existence revolves around helping others. The nursing role makes Chansey into embodiment of compassion, whose form follows function through having pouch for carrying healing eggs and having gentle disposition that medical profession requires, making Chansey into ideal caretaker, whose appearance communicates gentleness through soft pink coloration and round proportions that threaten nobody, making patients comfortable with care that Chansey provides through looking too kind to cause harm even accidentally. Fact 13. The happiness evolution that Chansey requires for becoming Blissey creates narrative where creature must experience joy before achieving final form, making happiness prerequisite for full development. The evolution mechanic suggests that caring for Chansey and making it happy produces reciprocal transformation, where loved Pokémon becomes even more capable of loving others through evolving into Blissey, whose name references bliss that happiness creates, making evolution into reward for treating Chansey well through providing relationship benefits that abuse wouldn't generate, creating moral lesson about kindness, producing benefits. Fact 14. Happiny represents baby Chansey, whose round white stone carried in pouch mimics egg that Chansey carries, creating adorable imitation where baby imitates adult behavior without understanding why adults carry eggs. The imitative behavior shows Happiny learning through observation, creating developmental stage where mimicry precedes comprehension, making Happiny into child playing, pretend, without realizing that pretend will become real when evolution transforms play acting into genuine egg carrying, that adult responsibilities require making current imitation into preparation for future role. Fact 15. Eevee's fluffy fur collar serves thermoregulation, according to some interpretations, but primarily serves aesthetic function, making Eevee appear perpetually wearing fashionable scarf that fluffiness accentuates. The fluffy ruff creates texture contrast with sleeker body fur, making Eevee appear well-groomed and creating touchable appearance that petting instinct responds to through wanting to feel softness that visual design suggests exists, creating desire for physical interaction that cuteness inspires through making observers want contact with cute creatures whose appearance promises pleasant, tactile experience. Fact 16. The fact that Eevee can evolve into multiple forms creates narrative about potential that cuteness contains, where adorable base form holds possibilities for transformation, making Eevee special beyond just appearance through representing adaptability. The evolutionary flexibility makes choosing not to evolve Eevee into legitimate decision, where maintaining cute base form has value that evolution would sacrifice through replacing adorable Eevee with specialized evolution whose function might matter more than appearance, but whose cuteness doesn't match Eevee's concentrated adorability that evolution dilutes through adding elements beyond pure cuteness. Fact 17. Skitty's pink coloration and tail-chasing behavior create kitten-like Pokémon whose design emphasizes playfulness through incorporating feline characteristics that cat lovers find endearing. The tail-chasing creates self-entertainment that shows Skitty doesn't need external stimulation for being content, making it low-maintenance companion whose happiness comes from simple pleasures. That tail-chasing represents creating image of easily satisfied creature whose contentment is contagious through showing observers that joy doesn't require complex entertainment when simple play suffices for creating happiness. Fact 18. The crush that Skitty develops on things it finds cute, according to Pokédex entries, creates adorable recursive situation where cute Pokémon finds other things cute and pursues them obsessively. The pursuit creates comedy through showing Skitty relentlessly chasing whatever captured its attention, whether target welcomes attention or not, making Skitty into enthusiastic admirer whose persistence becomes charming through being motivated by appreciation rather than by malice, making Skitty stalking into flattery rather than threat. Because intentions are pure admiration, that cute appearance makes harmless. Fact 19. Azuril's tail is heavier than its body, causing Azuril to bounce on tail when moving, creating locomotion that is simultaneously inefficient and adorable through showing baby Pokémon struggling with anatomy that hasn't proportioned correctly yet. The bouncing creates clumsy movement that helplessness signals through, demonstrating that Azuril hasn't mastered basic mobility, making it vulnerable and deserving protection, that competent movers don't need creating sympathy through showing creature overcoming physical limitations through determination that bouncing represents when easier movement isn't option that current development allows. Fact 20. The tail that serves as flotation device allows Azuril to bounce on water according to entries describing how tail's buoyancy keeps Azuril from drowning when falling into water. The safety mechanism shows evolutionary adaptation, protecting vulnerable baby whose clumsiness creates dangers that tail compensates for through providing buoyancy that prevents drowning, making Azuril's design into creature that evolution protected from its own limitations through developing features that make helplessness less dangerous than it would be without accommodations that biology provided for surviving youth's vulnerabilities. Fact 21. Maril's design as rounder version of Azuril creates evolutionary progression where baby becomes slightly less baby-like while maintaining cuteness through growth that doesn't eliminate adorability. The continued roundness suggests that maturation doesn't require losing all juvenile characteristics, making Maril into adolescent, whose cuteness persists beyond infancy, creating ongoing appeal that adult forms sometimes lose when specialization replaces generalized cuteness with functional features that adult survival requires, but which aesthetic appeal might suffer from when function conflicts with form. Fact 22. Teddiursa's design as teddy bear Pokémon creates obvious appeal through referencing beloved toy that children associate with comfort and security, making Teddiursa into living version of transitional object that attachment psychology describes. The teddy bear reference makes Teddiursa instantly recognizable as cute through cultural associations that teddy bears accumulated across centuries of being children's companions, making Teddiursa tap into existing affection for plush toys that childhood memories preserve, creating immediate emotional plane, connection that design, reference to familiar comfort object enables. Fact 23. The crescent moon mark on Teddiursa's forehead glows in darkness according to some descriptions, creating bioluminescence that serves as nightlight, making Teddiursa into companion whose presence comforts in darkness. The nightlight function makes Teddiursa useful beyond just cute, making it practical companion for children afraid of dark whose fears Teddiursa's glowing forehead addresses through, providing illumination that darkness removes, creating dual appeal, where Teddiursa is both adorable and functional, making it desirable companion whose utility reinforces aesthetic appeal. Fact 24. The paw that Teddiursa licks constantly becomes soaked in honey that sweetness makes attractive to bug types that seek food source. The paw licking creates habitual gesture that comfort-seeking suggests through resembling thumb-sucking that human children employ for self-soothing, making Teddiursa into creature that needs comforting, creating vulnerability that protection instinct responds to through recognizing that creature, engaging in comfort behavior, needs additional comfort that caregivers can provide through presence and through care. Fact 25. Centret stands on tail to scout for danger, creating lookout behavior that protects group through vigilance that standing provides for seeing over grass. The sentinel behavior shows Centret as community member whose contributions matter for group survival, creating role that social species require for detecting threats before they arrive, making Centret into responsible creature, despite cute appearance, suggesting playfulness rather than diligence. That lookout duty requires making Centret into example of how cute creatures can be competent when responsibilities demand reliability. Fact 26. The nervousness that Centret displays when alone contrasts with confidence that group provides, creating social dependency that pack animals exhibit through needing companions for feeling secure. The social nature makes Centret into creature that bonds strongly with trainers who become pack that solitary. Centret lacks creating relationship, where Centret's need for companionship makes it loyal to whoever provides social connection that instinct demands for feeling safe in world that solitary existence makes threatening. Fact 27. Furret's long body creates tube-like shape that children find amusing through exaggerated proportions that realistic anatomy wouldn't produce, making Furret into creature whose impractical design serves aesthetic purposes rather than serving practical purposes that efficiency would demand. The elongated body creates humorous appearance that absurdity makes endearing through being so impractical that it becomes charming rather than being annoying, making Furret into joke that everyone enjoys because design commits fully to elongation without compromise that practicality would require. Fact 28. Spheel's perfectly round body creates ball Pokémon, whose rolling creates primary locomotion, making Spheel into creature that moves by becoming spherical and rolling across surfaces. The rolling creates adorable movement that clumsiness implies through being inefficient compared to walking, but which commitment makes charming through showing Spheel fully, embracing being ball rather than being ashamed of roundness, making spherical form into identity that Spheel celebrates through rolling everywhere, despite difficulties that method creates for navigation, requiring precision. Fact 29. The clapping that Spheel does when happy creates seal-like behavior that audiences recognize from circus performances, making Sfeel into performer whose applause celebrates everything worth celebrating. The enthusiastic clapping shows Sfeel as optimist, whose joy is expressed physically through celebration. That clapping represents making Sfeel into positive presence, whose happiness is contagious through demonstrations that good things deserve recognition. That applause provides making Sfeel into cheerleader whose support everybody appreciates receiving. Fact 30. The fact that Sfeel struggles to move uphill because spherical body rolls backward creates comedic image of Sfeel attempting to climb slopes while gravity pulls it downward, creating Sisyphean struggle. The frustrated efforts create sympathy through showing Sfeel persisting despite repeated failures that design guarantees, making determination admirable even when success is impossible, creating tragic comedy where Sfeel never gives up, despite rational assessment suggesting that accepting limitation would be wiser than continuing to attempt what spherical body cannot achieve. Fact 31. Rowlet's round body and ability to rotate head 180 degrees like actual owl creates cute creature whose owl characteristics are exaggerated for maximum adorability. The head rotation creates amusing visual where Rowlet's body remains stationary while head swivels independently, creating disconnect between body and head, positioning that looks impossible, making Rowlet into creature whose anatomy defies expectations, creating surprise that visual impossibility generates when head moves while body stays still. Fact 32. The sleepy nature that Rowlet displays creates drowsy Pokémon that constantly naps, making Rowlet into representation of comfort and rest that sleep embodies. The perpetual sleepiness makes Rowlet relatable to people who value sleep, making it spirit animal for those who prefer resting to activity, creating identification that shared preference for napping enables between Rowlet and trainers who to appreciate that ambition isn't virtue when comfort is available, making Rowlet into advocate for rest. Fact 33. The bow-tie-like leaf that adorns Rowlet's chest creates formal appearance that dapper aesthetic makes charming through suggesting that Rowlet dressed up for occasions, even though bow-tie is natural feature rather than clothing. The formal appearance creates personality interpretation, where Rowlet is gentleman, whose manners are impeccable, making bow-tie into symbol of refinement that politeness requires, making Rowlet into courteous creature, whose consideration for others' appearance symbolizes through wearing equivalent of formal attire. Fact 34. Piplup's proud nature, despite small size, creates comedy through showing confidence that circumstances don't justify, making Piplup into creature with self-image exceeding objective capabilities. The pride creates endearing quality through showing Piplup refuses to acknowledge limitations that size imposes, making it determined to prove itself worthy of respect that prideful bearing demands, even when evidence suggests humility would be more appropriate, creating gap between self-perception and reality that confidence maintains despite contradictory feedback. Fact 35. The fact that Piplup refuses food from humans, according to some Pokédex entries, shows independence that self-sufficiency values, making Piplup into creature that doesn't accept charity. The refusal creates admirable stubbornness, where Piplup would rather struggle than accept help that pride prevents from requesting, making Piplup into creature that values autonomy more than values comfort, creating character whose integrity is absolute, even when flexibility would be practical, making Piplup into example of principle over pragmatism. Fact 36. Munchlax's constant eating creates baby Pokémon whose primary activity is consuming food that metabolism demands for supporting growth. The bottomless appetite makes Munchlax into a relatable creature whose hunger everyone understands, making eating into full-time occupation that defines identity through being most prominent characteristic that Munchlax displays. Creating personality where food is central, concern that other interests cannot compete with because hunger overrides everything else. Fact 37. The ability to hide food in long fur creates storage system that Munchlax uses for ensuring snacks are always available, making fur into pantry. The food storage creates adorable habit where Munchlax unconsciously squirrels away food for later without remembering where food was stored, creating forgetfulness that discovers hidden snacks accidentally when searching fur reveals. Food that previous Munchlax hid for future Munchlax, who benefits from past self's foresight, even though intention was selfish rather than being generous to future self. Fact 38. Togedemaru's round body and electrical abilities create spiny ball design that hedgehog and pufferfish characteristics combine into adorable electric rodent. The spiny exterior creates defensive appearance that cuteness undermines through making spikes seem decorative rather than threatening, creating creature whose defenses are apparent but whose threat level remains low through cute appearance, suggesting that spikes are for show rather than being serious weapons, making Togedemaru into creature that looks protected without looking dangerous. Fact 39. The ability to attract lightning creates behavior where Togedemaru stands on high points during storms, deliberately seeking electrical discharge that normal creatures avoid, making Togedemaru into adrenaline junkie whose thrill-seeking involves literal lightning strikes. The storm chasing creates personality where Togedemaru loves excitement that danger provides, making it fearless rather than cautious, creating adventurous spirit that caution wouldn't restrain when opportunity for experiencing thrills presents itself, making Togedemaru into daredevil whose courage exceeds common sense. Fact 40. Vulpix's 6 curled tails create fluffy appearance that magnificence suggests through having multiple tails that mythology associates with wisdom and power, making baby Vulpix into creature whose potential is visible before maturation actualizes it. The multiple tails suggest special nature despite baby status, creating creature that is both adorable and remarkable through having features that normal creatures lack, making Vulpix into extraordinary creature whose cuteness doesn't eliminate exceptionalism that tail count indicates, making Vulpix simultaneously approachable through cuteness and aspirational through possessing characteristics that distinguish it from ordinary creatures. And so concludes the first part of our adorable Pokemon journey, having explored Pikachu's strategic deployment of cute features, baby Pokemon whose helplessness triggers protection instinct, round Pokemon whose spherical forms maximize huggability, sleepy Pokemon whose drowsiness invites napping together, proud Pokemon whose confidence exceeds size, hungry Pokemon whose appetite drives behavior, and fluffy Pokemon whose multiple tails create magnificent cuteness. Rest now if sleep calls, or continue to part 2, where we'll discover more adorable designs, heartwarming behaviors, and species whose existence serves primarily to make trainers smile through cuteness that transcends practical function. Sleep gently, dear friends. Welcome back, dear friends, to our continuing exploration of adorable Pokemon facts. In this second part, we'll discover the touching bonds between Pokemon and their trainers, explore species whose behaviors demonstrate affection and loyalty, examine the ways Pokemon care for each other in heartwarming displays of community, investigate the precious animations and interactions that games have featured across generations, uncover the developmental stages where baby Pokemon learn from parents, and reveal the small details that make certain species irresistibly endearing, despite not being conventionally cute. So settle back comfortably, close your eyes when sleep beckons, and let us continue this gentle journey through the adorable moments that make Pokémon special. Fact 41. Cubone wears its deceased mother's skull, creating tragic backstory that makes Cubone's loneliness into permanent condition that companionship with trainer partially alleviates without fully healing grief that skull represents as constant reminder. The skull wearing creates sympathetic character whose sadness needs comforting, making Cubone into creature deserving extra affection through having experienced loss. That childhood shouldn't include making Cubone into orphan, whose vulnerability is absolute when lacking family that most baby Pokémon possess, creating special responsibility for trainers who become surrogate family for Cubone, whose biological family cannot be replaced, but which chosen family can supplement through providing care that grief makes necessary. Fact 42. The crying that Cubone does when lonely creates sound that echoes inside skull, amplifying sobs that helmet magnifies, making Cubone's grief audible to everyone nearby. The echoing cries create acoustic phenomenon where sadness becomes impossible to ignore through being broadcast through skull that acts as amplifier, making Cubone's emotions public rather than private, creating vulnerability where feelings cannot be hidden, making Cubone into emotionally transparent creature whose needs are obvious through sounds that skull projects, making it impossible for caregivers to overlook distress that acoustic design makes unavoidable. Fact 43. Psyduck's constant headache creates sympathetic character whose suffering is chronic, making Psyduck into creature that deserves gentleness that pain requires for minimizing discomfort. The perpetual headache makes Psyduck into reluctant psychic whose powers activate involuntarily when pain intensifies, creating situation where abilities are burden rather than gift-making. Psyduck into tragic figure whose strength comes with suffering creating cost that using powers inflicts, making Psyduck hesitant to battle when fighting causes pain that victory doesn't compensate for when winning means hurting. Fact 44. The vacant expression that Psyduck maintains creates appearance of confusion that makes Psyduck seem perpetually bewildered by world around it, creating endearing quality through making Psyduck appear innocent and simple. The confused look creates comedy through showing Psyduck not understanding what's happening, making it into comic relief whose befuddlement is charming rather than frustrating through suggesting that Psyduck's confusion comes from innocence rather than from stupidity, making vacant stare into expression of childlike wonder rather than being sign of incompetence. Fact 45. Slowpoke's incredible slowness creates laid-back Pokémon whose relaxed nature makes stress impossible through being too slow to experience urgency that anxiety requires. The slowness makes Slowpoke into Zen master, whose peace comes from not rushing, creating example of how contentment derives from accepting present moment, rather than worrying about future that hasn't arrived or past that cannot change, making Slowpoke into teacher whose lesson is patience. That slowness forces everyone around it to practice when interacting with Pokémon that cannot be hurried regardless of how pressing circumstances seem. Fact 46. The yawn that Slowpoke famously performs takes 5 seconds to complete, creating exaggerated demonstration of slowness that becomes comedic through commitment to taking excessive time for simple action. The prolonged yawn creates visual comedy where audience watches entire process unfold at pace that tests patience, making yawn into event rather than into instant action, creating humor through dedication to slowness that doesn't cut corners, or rush, even when rushing would be appropriate, making Slowpoke's commitment to being slow absolute regardless of context. Fact 47. Ditto's transformation ability allows it to become any Pokemon it sees, creating creature whose identity is fluid and whose appearance changes to match companions. The transformation creates adorable scenarios where Ditto attempts to blend in through mimicry that isn't perfect, creating slightly off copies that small errors make endearing, through showing Ditto trying hard to match original, but not quite succeeding, making imperfect transformation into charm rather than failure, because effort is obvious, even when execution is flawed, making Ditto's attempted disguises adorable through visible attempts to fit in. Fact 48. The face that Ditto maintains even when transformed creates signature characteristic, where Ditto transformed Pokemon can be identified through simple dot eyes and line mouth that Ditto's default expression provides. The persistent face creates comedy, where transformed, Ditto obviously isn't original, despite attempting disguise, making Ditto into Spy, whose cover is always blown, through inability to change facial expression, creating earnest attempts at stealth that facial limitations undermine, making Ditto's espionage efforts adorably incompetent through having obvious tell that disguise cannot eliminate. Fact 49. Shaymin's ability to purify polluted areas through absorbing toxins creates environmental hero, whose cute appearance contrasts with important ecological role, making Shaymin into creature that is both adorable and essential. The purification power makes Shaymin into healer, whose presence improves environments, creating beneficial relationship where beauty and function combine, making Shaymin appealing aesthetically while also being valuable practically, creating creature whose cuteness serves purpose beyond just being pleasant to look at. When healing abilities make Shaymin into force for environmental good, that cute appearance makes approachable. Fact 50. The flowers that bloom on Shaymin's body when it feels gratitude create visual representation of emotional state, making Shaymin into creature whose feelings manifest physically through floral expression. The blooming flowers show Shaymin's happiness externally, making internal emotions visible to everyone, creating transparency where feelings cannot be hidden. When body displays them through flowers that gratitude produces, making Shaymin into emotionally honest creature whose joy is shared with everyone who witnesses blooming. That appreciation triggers making Shaymin's happiness into public celebration rather than private experience. Fact 51. Minccino's obsessive cleaning creates neat freak Pokemon whose compulsion to tidy makes it perfect housekeeper, whose services include dusting with fluffy tail that effectiveness makes useful. The cleaning behavior creates personality where orderliness matters more than matters to most creatures, making Minccino into perfectionist whose standards are high, creating creature that cannot tolerate mess, making it simultaneously helpful through cleaning and annoying through insisting everything must be spotless, creating dual nature, where assistance comes with demands that recipients must tolerate when accepting Minccino's help that comes with strings attached. Fact 52. The tail that Minccino uses as duster is described as being softer than silk, creating luxurious texture that makes Minccino's grooming pleasant rather than painful. The soft tail makes Minccino's cleaning services gentle, creating grooming that doesn't irritate, making Minccino into preferred cleaning companion whose touch is comfortable rather than harsh, making cleaning session into spa experience rather than into chore, creating positive associations that make Minccino's compulsive tidying into welcome intervention rather than unwanted intrusion, when cleaning feels good rather than feeling annoying. Fact 53. Rockruff's loyalty is described as absolute, with Pokédex entries stating it never forgets trainer who raised it from infancy, creating bond that time cannot break. The eternal loyalty makes Rockruff into faithful companion whose dedication is guaranteed, making Rockruff into ideal first Pokémon for trainers seeking partner whose commitment is certain, creating relationship where Rockruff's devotion is foundation, that other relationships model creating standard that loyalty sets when Rockruff demonstrates what complete dedication looks like, making other bonds seem conditional by comparison. Fact 54. The behavior where Rockruff rubs against trainers leaving scent creates marking behavior that dogs exhibit through claiming owners as territory, making Rockruff's affection into possessive declaration. The scent marking shows Rockruff claiming trainer as belonging to it, creating relationship where ownership goes both directions, with trainer owning Rockruff, while Rockruff owns trainer through marking that declares possession, making bond mutual rather than one-sided, creating equality where both parties claim each other, making relationship into partnership rather than into hierarchy where one dominates other. Fact 55. Stuffle's appearance as teddy bear makes it target for hugging from humans who don't realize that Stuffle dislikes being embraced, creating comedy through showing cute creature rejecting affection that appearance invites. The dislike of hugging creates personality where Stuffle values personal space despite looking like perfect hugging candidate, creating gap between appearance and preference, making Stuffle into creature whose boundaries must be respected, even when cuteness makes respecting boundaries difficult through inspiring hugging impulse that Stuffle's preferences contradict. Fact 56. The flailing that Stuffle does when picked up creates resistance that surprising strength makes effective through allowing small Pokémon to escape unwanted embraces. The flailing demonstrates that Stuffle's cute appearance conceals genuine power, making underestimation dangerous for those who assume cute means weak, discovering through experience that Stuffle can defend boundaries through force that appearance doesn't suggest exists, making Stuffle into example of how cuteness can be deceptive when hiding capabilities that visual assessment misses. Fact 57. Beware's desire to show affection through hugging creates dangerous situation because incredible strength makes embraces potentially fatal, creating tragedy where loving gesture becomes lethal. The deadly hugging shows how good intentions can produce harmful outcomes when strength exceeds control, making Beware into creature whose love is dangerous, creating pathos through showing. Beware doesn't intend harm, but cannot prevent harm that strength guarantees when hugging anything fragile, making Beware's affection into threat that recipients must survive rather than enjoy, creating sad reality where Beware's love repels rather than attracts potential friends. Fact 58. Komala spends entire life sleeping while clinging to log that it never releases, creating permanent nap that birth through death encompasses. The eternal sleep makes Komala into representation of ultimate relaxation, whose dream never ends, creating life that is entirely rest without work, interrupting sleep, making Komala into aspiration for those who value sleep above productivity, creating identification with Pokémon whose priorities align with valuing rest over achievement, making Komala into spirit animal for people who reject hustle culture, preferring comfort that Komala's lifestyle represents. Fact 59. The log that Komala clutches was given by Mother when Komala was born and will be held until death, creating heirloom that represents family connection. The eternal grip shows Komala maintaining connection to Mother through object that represents her, making log into transitional object, whose presence comforts through association with maternal care, making Komala into creature that never fully separates from mother, whose gift provides permanent security. That attachment to log represents making Komala into example of healthy attachment, where object maintains connection when physical presence isn't possible. Fact 60. Mareep's wool stores electricity, creating fluffy exterior that shocking touch makes dangerous for those expecting soft cuddle, discovering through painful experience that petting Mareep produces electric shock. The electric wool creates deceptive appearance, where fluffiness invites touch that electricity punishes, making Mareep into creature whose cuteness is trap that consequences teach not to repeat, making second attempt at petting unlikely. After first attempt produced shock that lesson creates, making Mareep into teacher whose curriculum is learning through experience that wool that looks soft actually hurts when touched. Fact 61. The ability of Mareep's wool to double in size when fully charged creates visual change that makes Mareep expand, becoming even fluffier when electricity accumulates. The expansion creates variable appearance where Mareep's size fluctuates based on charge level, making Mareep into creature whose mood or state can be assessed through volume that wool achieves through electrical storage, creating visible indicator of internal condition that wool size communicates to observers who learn to read Mareep's fluffiness as information about electrical status. Fact 62. Wooloo's rolling creates sheep Pokémon whose primary defense is becoming ball that rolls away from danger, creating escape strategy. That commitment to fleeing makes effective through building momentum that predators cannot match. The rolling shows Wooloo as pacifist whose response to threat isn't fighting, but is removing self from situation through rolling, creating creature whose courage involves survival rather than combat, making Wooloo into example of how fleeing is legitimate strategy that bravery doesn't require when survival is goal-making retreat tactical rather than cowardly. Fact 63. The wool that Wooloo produces is described as quality fiber that weavers prize for making clothing, creating economic value that makes Wooloo useful beyond just being cute. The valuable wool makes Wooloo into resource that farming creates, making Wooloo into livestock whose cultivation benefits humans, creating symbiotic relationship where Wooloo receives care while humans receive wool, making arrangement mutually beneficial when proper animal welfare ensures Wooloo's well-being, while wool production provides human benefit, creating ethical farming that respects Wooloo while utilizing renewable resource that wool represents. Fact 64. Yamper's corgi-like design creates dog Pokémon that breed popularity, makes instantly recognizable as cute through cultural associations that corgis accumulated through internet fame, making Yamper appeal to existing dog lovers. The corgi reference makes Yamper into Pokémon that transcends franchise through connecting to broader culture where corgi enthusiasm makes Yamper automatically appealing to demographics who might not otherwise engage with Pokémon but whose corgi appreciation makes Yamper into entry point that familiar breed provides for approaching franchise through Pokémon resembling beloved dog breed. Fact 65. The herding instinct that Yamper displays creates behavior where Yamper chases anything that moves, attempting to gather moving objects into group. The herding shows Yamper maintaining breed characteristics that working dogs possess, making Yamper into creature whose instincts serve practical purposes, creating utility that cuteness supplements through making Yamper both adorable and dog functional, creating dual appeal where aesthetic pleasure combines with practical benefit that herding provides for trainers needing assistance, gathering scattered items that Yamper's instinct drives it to collect. Fact 66. Squovit's hoarding behavior creates squirrel Pokémon whose cheeks store berries that foraging collects for future consumption, creating preparedness that anxiety might motivate. The hoarding shows Squovit as planner, whose present actions serve future needs, creating responsible creature, whose impulse control allows delayed gratification that storing food requires when current hunger might demand immediate consumption. That future-focused Squovit resists through saving food for later, demonstrating restraint that survival sometimes demands when abundance is temporary, requiring conservation for sustaining through scarcity. Fact 67. The panic that Squovit experiences when stored food is stolen creates protective instinct, where hoarded resources become precious possessions whose loss produces genuine distress. The attachment to stored food shows Squovit's planning is serious business, creating investment in hoard that makes theft into crisis, requiring response that loss generates when carefully accumulated supplies disappear, creating violation that Squovit cannot tolerate, making food theft into personal offense rather than minor inconvenience, creating stakes that make hoard protection into priority. Fact 68. Morpeko's hangry form that appears when hunger strikes creates dual personality, where satisfied Morpeko is cheerful, while hungry Morpeko is irritable, creating mood swings that feeding schedule determines. The hangry transformation creates relatable character whose mood depends on blood sugar, making Morpeko into representation of how hunger affects temperament, creating universal experience that everyone recognizes through having experienced. How missing meals affects disposition, making Morpeko into sympathetic character whose crankiness is understandable when hunger explains personality change that food instantly reverses. Fact 69. The electric pouches in Morpeko's cheeks generate energy that hunger converts from electric to dark type, creating biological phenomenon where nutritional state affects type, making Morpeko into unique Pokemon whose typing is variable. The type changing creates strategic element where keeping Morpeko fed maintains electric typing while allowing hunger produces dark typing, creating management consideration where feeding isn't just welfare concern, but is tactical decision affecting type matchups that hunger alters, creating situation where nutrition matters mechanically beyond just affecting mood. Fact 70. Sobble's camouflage ability allows disappearing when frightened, creating defense mechanism that invisibility provides for shy Pokemon whose anxiety makes confrontation intolerable. The camouflage shows Sobble as anxious creature whose coping mechanism is hiding, making Sobble into sympathetic character whose fear is managed through avoidance, creating personality that many people identify with through recognizing own social anxiety in Sobble's desire to disappear when attention becomes overwhelming, making Sobble into representation of introversion that visibility drains, requiring breaks that invisibility provides through allowing escape from observation. Fact 71. The crying that Sobble does when scared releases tears that are described as making anyone nearby cry through chemical irritant. That tear composition includes creating shared misery. The contagious crying creates defense through making attackers too sad to continue assault, creating emotional weapon that Sobble's vulnerability produces as side effect of fear, making Sobble into creature whose weakness becomes strength. When tears that express distress also create distress in others, making predators abandon attacks through becoming incapacitated by crying that Sobble's tears induce, making Sobble's sadness into shield. Fact 72. Grookey's stick that it carries everywhere becomes special through Grookey's energy, making ordinary branch into wand that growth-promoting properties possess. The stick relationship shows Grookey as creature that forms attachment to objects, making inanimate stick into companion that Grookey never abandons, creating bond that objects can inspire when they become extensions of self-creating. Relationship with stick that mirrors how children bond with favorite toys, making stick into Grookey's security blanket, whose presence comforts through familiarity that beloved object provides through consistent presence. Fact 73. The drumming that Grookey performs on stick creates music that encourages plant growth according to Pokédex entries, making Grookey into musician whose art has practical applications beyond entertainment. The growth-promoting rhythm shows how creativity can serve functional purposes when music's effects extend beyond aesthetic pleasure into tangible benefits that plant growth represents, making Grookey into artist whose work produces measurable results rather than just producing subjective experiences, creating validation that objective outcomes provide for art whose effects are observable, making Grookey's music into tool as much as expression. Fact 74. Scorbunny's energetic nature creates hyperactive Pokémon whose constant motion makes rest impossible, creating personality where stillness is foreign state. The perpetual energy makes Scorbunny into exhausting companion whose enthusiasm never flags, creating challenge for trainers whose energy doesn't match Scorbunny's infinite supply, making relationship asymmetric when Scorbunny's needs exceed trainers' capacity, requiring patience that tiredness tests when Scorbunny demands activity that tired trainer cannot provide, creating tension between Scorbunny's needs and trainer's limitations. That compatibility requires addressing through finding balance. Fact 75. The fire energy that warms Scorbunny's feet creates biological heating system that keeps Scorbunny comfortable in cold environments, while also providing power for fire attacks that heated feet enable. The warm feet show adaptation that serves dual purposes, creating efficiency where single feature provides comfort and combat capability, making Scorbunny's feet into multifunctional anatomy that evolution designed for maximizing utility through making heat serve multiple needs that separate systems would require in less efficient designs, making Scorbunny into example of elegant biological engineering. Fact 76. Hatenna's sensitivity to emotions makes crowds unbearable, creating empathic Pokémon that must avoid populated areas where emotional noise overwhelms sensitive perception. The emotional sensitivity creates vulnerability that isolation manages, making Hatenna into creature that needs quiet for maintaining well-being, creating special requirements that owners must accommodate through providing environment that emotional intensity doesn't overwhelm, making Hatenna high-maintenance companion whose needs are legitimate, even though demanding, making relationship with Hatenna into commitment that empathy sensitivity requires respecting through environmental management. Fact 77. The silence that Hatenna prefers creates peaceful presence, whose quietness calms, making Hatenna into creature whose preferred state is tranquility, that noise disrupts. The love of silence makes Hatenna into meditation companion, whose presence encourages quietness that Hatenna's needs demand, making relationship with Hatenna into practice of stillness that modern life rarely provides, creating value beyond companionship when Hatenna's requirements create excuse for experiencing silence that busy schedules wouldn't otherwise include, making Hatenna into teacher whose lesson is appreciating quiet. Fact 78. Milcery's cream body creates living dessert whose existence seems impractical, but whose sweetness makes it popular despite biological questions that cream-based anatomy raises. The cream composition creates organism that shouldn't survive but does, creating Pokémon, whose biology defies logic, making Milcery into magical creature whose existence cannot be explained through normal science, requiring acceptance that fantasy operates under different rules than reality follows, making Milcery into a reminder that Pokemon world isn't constrained by physics that our world obeys. Fact 79. The evolution method where Milcery is spun while holding sweet creates transformation. That dancing determines making evolution into participatory event where trainers' actions directly cause metamorphosis. The spin evolution creates memorable experience where physical activity produces transformation, making evolution into achievement that effort earned rather than into automatic process that levels trigger, making Alcremie evolution into a special moment that spinning created, making relationship with Alcremie into story about how evolution happened through dance that trainer and Milcery performed together. Fact 80. The decoration that Alcremie features varies based on sweet used and spin direction, creating customization that makes each Alcremie unique through appearing different depending on evolution circumstances. The variation creates collection opportunity, where obtaining all Alcremie forms requires multiple Milcery and multiple sweets, making Alcremie into family rather than into single form, creating motivation for repeated breeding and repeated spinning for obtaining complete set, that all combinations represent making Alcremie into collection within collection, when pursuing all variants becomes project that completionists undertake. And so concludes the second part of our adorable Pokemon journey, having explored Cubone's tragic backstory, creating sympathetic orphan, Slowpoke's zen slowness, teaching patience, Ditto's imperfect transformations, making effort endearing, Shaman's gratitude blooming into flowers, Rockruff's eternal loyalty creating faithful companion, Beware's deadly affection creating tragic love, Komala's eternal sleep representing ultimate rest, hurting Yamper maintaining working instincts, anxious Sobble hiding through camouflage, and energetic Scorbunny maintaining perpetual motion. Rest now, if sleep calls, or continue to final part where we'll discover the remaining adorable facts about precious moments, heartwarming animations, and why cuteness matters. Sleep gently, dear friends. Good night, trainers. Welcome back, dear friends, to the final part of our exploration of adorable Pokemon facts. In this concluding section, we'll discover the small animation details that make interactions precious, explore how cuteness serves evolutionary and strategic purposes, examine the psychology behind why we find certain features irresistible, investigate the cultural impact of cute Pokemon on merchandise and media, uncover the design philosophies that create maximum adorability, and conclude with reflections on why cuteness matters in gaming and in life, and what adorable Pokemon teach us about joy, care, and finding delight in small things. So, settle back one final time, close your eyes whenever sleep beckons, and let us complete this gentle journey through everything that makes Pokemon adorable. Fact 81. The Pokemon Amy and Pokemon Refresh features that allowed petting Pokemon on touchscreen created intimate interactions where players physically stroked their companions, creating tactile connection that controllers alone couldn't provide. The petting mechanics made relationships tangible through simulated touch that stylus enabled, creating feeling of actually interacting with Pokemon whose reactions to petting showed where they enjoyed being touched and where they didn't like contact, creating personalities through preferences that petting discovered, making each Pokémon into individual whose likes and dislikes players learned through experimentation. Fact 82. The affection system, where Pokémon that loved trainers would sometimes survive fatal hits with 1 HP, would shake off status conditions, or would land critical hits, more often created mechanical benefits for treating Pokémon kindly. The gameplay advantages made caring for Pokémon into strategic decision beyond just emotional satisfaction, creating incentive for building bonds that combat benefits, rewarded through making loved Pokémon stronger than neglected Pokémon, whose lack of affection meant lacking bonuses that love provided, creating system where kindness produced measurable advantages that optimization required acknowledging. Fact 83. The unique cries that each Pokémon possesses create audio signatures that experienced players recognize without seeing Pokémon, creating identification through sound that visual confirmation doesn't require. The distinctive vocalizations make Pokémon into characters whose voices express personalities that designs suggest, creating audio characterization that reinforces visual design through making cute Pokémon sound cute, through high-pitched cries that cuteness expectations fulfill, creating consistency between appearance and sound that multimedia presentation maintains through ensuring visual and audio elements align. Fact 84. The animations in modern games, where Pokémon display personality through idle animations, create living creatures that behavioral quirks make believable. The idle behaviors show Pokémon as existing rather than as waiting, creating impression that Pokémon have lives beyond trainer interactions, making them seem autonomous rather than seeming like tools that only exist when needed, creating depth that idle animations provide through showing Pokémon doing things unrelated to battle or training, creating believable creatures whose existence continues when not directly supervised. Fact 85. Pokémon Camp in Sword and Shield, where players could play with Pokémon using toys and watch them interact with each other, created social simulation, where Pokémon displayed personalities through toy preferences and through social behaviors. The camp interactions showed Pokémon as individuals whose preferences varied, creating diversity that made observing interactions rewarding through discovering which toys each Pokémon preferred and how different Pokémon interacted when playing together, creating dynamics that watching revealed, making camp into voyeuristic pleasure, where observing Pokémon living created entertainment that participation didn't require. Fact 86. The curry cooking in camp that required timing and attention created minigame whose results affected how much Pokémon enjoyed meal-making, cooking into skill that practice improved. The cooking mechanic made feeding Pokémon into active process rather than automatic process, creating investment in meal quality that effort determined, making good curry into achievement that care produced through attention to timing and endon ingredients, creating satisfaction when Pokémon's reactions showed appreciation for well-prepared meal that effort had created, making cooking into expression of care that meal quality communicated. Fact 87. The evolutionary purpose of cuteness in real animals involves triggering parental care through features that signal youth and vulnerability, creating biological response that ensures adults protect young whose survival depends on inspiring protection. The same mechanisms make cute Pokémon effective through exploiting instincts that evolution programmed into human psychology for ensuring care of human infants whose neotenic features Pokémon designs replicate, creating cross-species appeal that biological programming doesn't restrict to same-species targets, making humans respond to cute Pokémon through mechanisms intended for human babies. Fact 88. The Japanese concept of kawaii that emphasizes cuteness as cultural value creates context, where cute designs receive more emphasis in Japanese media than in Western media that traditionally valued different aesthetics. The cultural context makes Pokemon's emphasis on cuteness culturally specific, creating designs that Japanese aesthetic preferences shaped, making Pokemon into expression of kawaii culture that international success validated through demonstrating that cuteness appeals globally despite being culturally specific value that Japan emphasizes more than other cultures traditionally have before kawaii culture spread internationally through media exports. Fact 89. The strategic use of cute Pokemon in competitive play demonstrates that adorable appearance doesn't preclude combat effectiveness, with Pokemon like Togekiss and Azumarill being both cute and competitively viable. The combat effectiveness shows that cuteness and competence aren't mutually exclusive, making cute Pokemon into legitimate team members rather than into novelties whose use is sentimental rather than strategic, creating validation for players who want to use favorite cute Pokemon without sacrificing competitive viability that some cute designs achieve through having stats and abilities that make them effective despite or alongside adorable appearance. Fact 90. Pachirisu's unexpected success at 2014 World Championships, where competitor Sejun Park used it to win tournament, demonstrated that unconventional cute Pokemon could succeed at highest competitive level through creative strategies. The victory made Pachirisu into celebrity, whose tournament success proved that any Pokemon could be viable through proper support and proper strategy, creating inspiration for players who wanted to use favorites rather than using only objectively strongest options, making Pachirisu into symbol of how love for Pokemon can motivate finding ways to make them work rather than abandoning them for statistically superior alternatives. Fact 91. The merchandise market for cute Pokemon generates enormous revenue through plushies, figurines, clothing, and accessories featuring adorable species, creating commercial success that validates cute designs' appeal. The merchandise sales demonstrate that cuteness translates into purchasing behavior when fans want to own representations of favorite cute Pokemon, making adorability into commercial asset that franchise capitalizes on through producing products featuring cutest designs, creating feedback loop where commercial success motivates creating more cute Pokemon whose merchandise potential makes them valuable beyond just gameplay roles. Fact 92. The center Pokemon distribution events that gave players cute Pokemon like Pikachu wearing various hats created collectibles whose value derived from exclusivity and from costumes that normal Pokemon couldn't wear. The costume distributions made cute Pokemon even cuter through adding accessories that enhanced cuteness, creating premium versions that regular specimens couldn't match, making event distributions into special occasions that acquiring limited cute Pokemon motivated attendance for creating marketing strategy where cuteness drove event participation that distribution exclusivity rewarded. Fact 93. The Pokemon centers in Japan that serve as official stores feature life-size plushies and photo opportunities with mascot costumes, creating immersive retail experiences where cute Pokemon are physically present. The experiential retail makes shopping into event rather than into transaction, creating memories that merchandise purchases commemorate, making Pokemon centers into destinations that tourism motivates when stores become attractions whose experiential elements justify travel that ordinary retail wouldn't warrant, making cute Pokemon into reasons for visiting Japan where official stores concentrate. Fact 94. The Pikachu Outbreak event in Yokohama, where hundreds of Pikachu mascots parade through city, creates spectacle that cuteness overload produces through overwhelming attendees with simultaneous cute stimuli. The parade demonstrates how cuteness scales where single cute thing is pleasant, but hundreds of cute things create sublime experience that quantity transforms into different quality, making Pikachu Outbreak into extreme cuteness that normal exposure doesn't approach, creating memorable experience that ordinary cuteness cannot match through sheer numerical superiority. Fact 95. The talking Pikachu in Detective Pikachu movie created controversy among fans who felt that speaking English ruined Pikachu's mystique that communication barrier had maintained. The controversy demonstrated that cuteness partly derives from otherness that language barrier creates, making Pikachu more appealing through being incomprehensible, creating mystery that speaking English eliminated through making Pikachu understandable, reducing him to ordinary character whose appeal suffered from comprehensibility that previous mystery had enhanced, creating debate about whether understanding increases or decreases appeal that inscrutability provides. Fact 96. The substitute doll design features cute appearance, despite being decoy that combat employs, creating contrast between adorable appearance and tactical function. The cute substitute shows how cuteness serves strategic purposes when adorable doll distracts opponents whose attacks target substitute rather than targeting user, creating value that cute appearance provides through being believable decoy that opponents fall for through assuming cute thing is real Pokémon rather than being disposable doll, making cuteness into deception that combat exploits. Fact 97. The Pokémon Smile app that encourages children to brush teeth through showing cute Pokémon that proper brushing rescues creates educational tool that cuteness motivates. The Dental Hygiene app demonstrates practical applications where cuteness incentivizes healthy behaviors that children might resist without cute motivation that Pokémon provide through making brushing into game where rewards are rescuing. Adorable creatures making dental care into mission rather than chore, creating positive associations that cute Pokémon enable through making necessary tasks enjoyable. Fact 98. The Pokémon Sleep app that tracks sleep patterns while featuring cute sleeping Pokémon creates wellness tool that adorability makes appealing. The Sleep app uses cuteness for promoting healthy sleep habits through showing cute Pokémon sleeping alongside user, creating companionship that makes going to bed pleasant rather than being end of fun, creating positive framing where sleep is activity that cute Pokémon participate in rather than being cessation of activity, making rest into shared experience with adorable companions. Fact 99. The return of following Pokémon in recent games, where chosen Pokémon walks behind trainer, creates visual companionship that constant presence maintains. The following feature makes relationships visible through showing Pokémon accompanying trainer rather than existing only in abstract party menu, creating impression that Pokémon are actually traveling together rather than being stored away, making bond tangible through visible presence that overworld sprite provides, creating connection that menu-only existence doesn't achieve, making following Pokémon into quality of life feature that emotional investment rewards. Fact 100. The size differences that following Pokémon display range from tiny Joltik riding on head to massive Wailord, somehow following despite being larger than Path, creating humor and creating cuteness through scale contrasts. The size variety makes following feature interesting through showing how different species would actually accompany trainer, creating believable behaviors when small Pokémon struggle to keep up, while large Pokémon dominate space, creating dynamics that size determines making following Pokémon into feature that showcases personalities that size implies through movement that mass influences. Fact 101. The animations where certain Pokémon celebrate victories through distinctive victory poses create personality expression that winning triggers. The celebration animations show Pokémon having emotional responses to victory, creating characters whose feelings are visible through poses that happiness takes, creating reward that extends beyond just winning, when Pokémon's joy at winning creates shared celebration that both trainer and Pokémon participate in, making victories into social moments rather than into solitary achievements. Fact 102. The fainting animation that avoids showing death through having Pokémon's eyes become swirls rather than showing Pokémon dying creates family-friendly presentation that actual combat mortality would contradict. The swirl eyes convention makes violence cute through stylizing unconsciousness into cartoonish effect that suffering conceals through maintaining upbeat aesthetic even when Pokémon lose, creating cognitive dissonance that cartoon presented. Violence resolves through being obviously fake, making combat into game rather than into actual fighting that real consequences would make disturbing. Fact 103. The Pokémon Center's healing machines feature adorable animation where Pokeballs rise and sparkle during healing, creating visual feedback that mechanical process becomes magical through presentation. The healing animation makes recovery into pleasant experience that sparkles in music makes satisfying, creating positive associations with healthcare that real medical care often lacks through being unpleasant, making Pokémon centers into idealized healthcare where healing is instant, painless, free, and accompanied by cute animations that real hospitals cannot provide. Fact 104. Nurse Joy's chancy or blissy assistants create consistent image where medical care providers are cute and nurturing, making healthcare appealing. The cute nurse assistants make Pokemon centers feel safe through staffing that gentle appearance suggests won't harm, creating trust that cute designs inspire through seeming incapable of malice, making medical setting less intimidating than reality's hospitals, that efficiency and sterility emphasize over comfort that Pokemon centers prioritize through cute aesthetics. Fact 105. The eggs that breeding produces feature cute designs, with spots creating anticipation for what will hatch, making eggs into mystery gifts that time reveals. The egg designs make breeding appealing through creating presents that waiting reveals, making delayed gratification into exciting experience that anticipation enhances through wondering what species will emerge, making eggs into surprises that cute external appearance promises will be worthwhile, making breeding into activity that cuteness motivates through creating attractive unknown quantities. Fact 106. The hatching animation where eggs crack and Pokemon emerges creates birth moment that witnessing makes special. The hatching creates emotional investment in newborn through showing moment of arrival, making baby Pokemon into creature whose birth was experienced rather than being creature that simply appeared, making relationship begin at literal beginning, creating bond that witnessing birth establishes through making player present at origin story that shared experience of hatching creates. Fact 107. The baby Pokemon that breeding sometimes produces represent purest cuteness through being smallest and most helpless, creating ultimate vulnerable creatures. The baby forms maximize all cute characteristics through exaggerating proportions and minimizing threats, creating designs optimized for cuteness rather than for any practical purpose, making baby Pokémon into art whose function is being adorable, making them into expressions of cuteness philosophy that other purposes don't constrain, making babies into concentrated cuteness that specialization enables. Fact 108. The Pokédex entries that describe cute behaviors like Teddiursa licking paws or like Skitty chasing tails create lore that enhances cuteness through describing endearing habits. The behavioral descriptions make cute Pokémon cuter through explaining what they do, making appearance into just first layer. That behavior enriches through adding personality that actions express, creating depth where cuteness isn't just visual, but is also behavioral, making Pokémon into characters whose cuteness derives from how they act, not just from how they look. Fact 109. The type advantage that Fairy type has against Dragon type creates narrative, where cute defeats fierce, making adorability into strategic strength. The type matchup suggests that cuteness is powerful despite appearing weak, creating message that underestimating cute is mistake that power concealed by cuteness punishes, making Fairy types into embodiment of appearance deception. Principle where looking harmless creates advantage that overconfident opponents discover too late, when cute Pokémon defeats them through having strength that cute exterior concealed. Fact 110. The Fairy type introduction in Generation VI that made many cute Pokémon like Clefairy and Jigglypuff retroactively Fairy type created type that cuteness defines. The Fairy type concentration of cute Pokémon creates type whose identity is partially aesthetic, making cuteness into mechanical characteristic. That type membership signals creating association where Fairy type suggests cuteness, making type into category that appearance determines as much as combat characteristics determine, making Fairy type into cute type that name doesn't acknowledge, but which roster reveals through predominantly featuring adorable designs. Fact 111. The Pokémon beauty contests in certain games create competition where cuteness and beauty are judged, creating alternate path to success beyond combat. The contests validate that cuteness has value beyond just aesthetics through making appearance into competitive category that contests judge, creating recognition that beauty matters independently from battle prowess, making cute Pokémon into legitimate contestants whose strengths lie in appearance rather than in fighting, creating diversity where multiple types of excellence are recognized rather than only combat excellence mattering. Fact 112. The photography features in games like Pokémon Snap create gameplay focused entirely on capturing cute moments rather than capturing Pokémon for battle. The photography gameplay makes cuteness into primary mechanic where objective is documenting adorable behaviors, creating game where violence is absent and appreciation is central, creating experience where Pokémon are subjects to observe rather than tools to use, making photography into meditative gameplay that cuteness makes rewarding through creating beautiful images that achievement represents. Fact 113. The shiny hunting community that dedicates time to finding alternate colored Pokémon demonstrates how rarity makes cute Pokémon even more valuable through scarcity increasing desirability. The shiny hunting shows that cuteness plus exclusivity creates premium appeal that normal cute cannot match, creating hierarchy where shiny cute exceeds regular cute through being rare, making acquisition into achievement that effort justifies through obtaining version that most players never see, making shiny cute into status symbol that dedication produces. Fact 114. The perfect IV breeding that competitive players undertake demonstrates that even when seeking combat effectiveness, cute Pokémon are desirable enough that players invest hours obtaining perfect versions. The breeding dedication shows that cuteness motivates effort, that practical concerns alone might not justify creating investment, that aesthetic preference drives, when love for cute Pokémon makes optimization worthwhile despite time costs. That efficiency alone wouldn't warrant making perfect cute Pokémon into projects that passion sustains. Fact 115. The online communities that form around cute Pokémon create fan spaces where appreciation is shared through fan art, discussions, and collections. The community formation shows that cuteness creates social bonds, when shared appreciation connects strangers who love same cute Pokémon, creating friendships that cute creatures facilitate through providing common ground that conversations build upon, making cute Pokémon into social catalysts whose appeal creates communities that wouldn't form without shared love for adorable creatures. Fact 116. The emotional support that cute Pokémon provide during difficult times demonstrates how cuteness serves psychological needs beyond entertainment. The comfort that cute designs provide shows that cuteness has therapeutic value when adorable images elevate mood, that stress or sadness depresses, creating coping mechanism where engaging with cute content provides relief that difficulty makes necessary, making cute Pokémon into self-care tools that mental health benefits from through providing positive stimuli that cuteness guarantees. Fact 117. The nostalgia that original cute Pokémon evoke for players who grew up with franchise creates emotional resonance that new cute Pokémon cannot replicate. The nostalgic connection shows that cuteness plus memory creates powerful combination where original cute Pokémon represent childhood, making them into symbols of innocence and happiness that past contained, creating emotional weight that current cute designs lack through not having years of association that original cute Pokémon accumulated through being constants across childhoods that they accompanied. Fact 118. The generational debates about which generation had cutest Pokémon demonstrate how subjective cuteness is, despite seeming objective. The debates show that what one person finds cute another might not, creating diversity of opinion, that personal taste determines, making cuteness into matter of preference rather than matter of fact, creating discussions that cannot resolve because aesthetics resist objective measurement, making cute debates into expressions of preference that agreement doesn't require when diversity of taste is acknowledged as legitimate variation. Fact 119. The accessibility that cute Pokémon provide for introducing franchise to new audiences demonstrates how cuteness serves gateway function. The welcoming appearance makes cute Pokémon into safe entry points that intimidating creatures wouldn't provide for audiences hesitant about franchise, creating bridges that cuteness builds when adorable designs make trying Pokémon appealing to people who might otherwise avoid franchise, that cute Pokémon make approachable through providing non-threatening first impression that exploration encourages. Fact 120. The ultimate purpose of cute Pokémon is creating joy, pure, uncomplicated delight that seeing adorable creature produces without requiring justification or serving ulterior motive beyond making people smile. The joy that cuteness creates demonstrates that beauty and pleasure have intrinsic value, that practical purposes don't need to justify when making life brighter is sufficient purpose for cute Pokémon, whose existence reminds us that not everything needs utility when aesthetic pleasure is valuable in itself, making cute Pokémon into argument for art and beauty and delight as ends in themselves rather than as means to other ends, teaching that sometimes cute thing exists just to be cute and that this is enough. that bringing happiness through adorability is complete purpose, that nothing needs to add to or improve upon when smiling at cute Pokemon is its own reward, that life is enriched by even though productivity isn't increased, showing that joy matters and that cuteness is legitimate source of joy, that modern life's emphasis on efficiency and productivity might dismiss, but which human well-being requires when aesthetic pleasure and emotional warmth that cute Pokemon provide contribute to quality of life that utility maximization alone cannot achieve without beauty and cuteness and adorability that make existence pleasant beyond just being productive or being successful, making cute Pokemon into teachers whose lesson is that delight matters and that making time for cute things isn't frivolous, but is essential to living fully in a world that needs more joy and less cynicism. That cute Pokemon combat through being unambiguously positive presences whose only agenda is being adorable and making people happy through existing as concentrations of everything good and pure and sweet that life contains when we pause to appreciate small joys that cute creatures represent. And so we conclude our comprehensive journey through 120 adorable Pokemon facts, having explored the strategic deployment of neotenic features that cuteness psychology explains, the baby Pokemon whose helplessness triggers protection instinct, the behavioral quirks that Pokédex entries reveal, making cute Pokemon into characters, the tragic backstories that make cute Pokemon sympathetic, the friendly behaviors that demonstrate affection and loyalty, the petting mechanics that made relationships tangible, the merchandise empires that cuteness built, the competitive viability that some cute Pokemon achieved, the photography gameplay that made observation rewarding, the community formation that shared appreciation enabled, and ultimately the intrinsic value that joy creation justifies without needing practical purposes for existing beyond making people smile through adorability that is its own complete reward. The lasting impact of cute Pokemon on franchise and on broader culture demonstrates how powerful cuteness is as design principle and as emotional catalyst, creating creatures that transcend their origins as game mechanics to become beloved characters whose appeal spans generations and cultures through exploiting universal human responses that evolution programmed for ensuring care of young, responses that cute designs activate regardless of whether target is actually helpless offspring requiring protection, making cute Pokemon into superstimuli that biological programming cannot distinguish from actual babies whose features cute designs replicate and exaggerate, creating irresistible appeal that rational analysis recognizes as manipulation but which emotional response cannot resist, despite understanding mechanisms that cuteness employs for inspiring care. The genius of Pokemon's cute designs lies in understanding that cuteness serves multiple functions simultaneously, attracting players through immediate aesthetic appeal, creating emotional investment through inspiring protective feelings, maintaining engagement through providing comfort during difficult gameplay moments, generating merchandise revenue through making fans want physical representations of favorite cute creatures, and ultimately enriching lives through providing sources of uncomplicated joy that cynical world makes rare when most media contains darkness or complexity that prevents pure delight, that cute Pokemon provide without ambiguity or without darkness complicating pleasure that adorability creates through being unambiguously positive presence that life's complications make precious when simplicity becomes rare, commodity that cute things preserve. The philosophy underlying cute Pokemon suggests that joy and beauty and delight are legitimate ends, that instrumental reasoning need not justify when making existence pleasant is sufficient purpose that utilitarian thinking might dismiss, but which human flourishing requires, teaching that productivity and efficiency and utility maximization miss essential aspects of good life that aesthetic, pleasure, and emotional warmth provide, when cute things make world brighter through existing as reminders that sweetness and innocence and gentleness matter, even though they don't contribute to material success or competitive advantage, making cute Pokémon into quiet rebellion against culture that values only what produces measurable outcomes, asserting instead that immeasurable goods like joy and comfort and delight that cute creatures provide are valuable precisely because they resist quantification and resist justification beyond direct experience of pleasure that cuteness creates. Sleep now, dear friends, having completed this exhaustive exploration of adorable Pokémon whose cuteness transcends mere aesthetics to become emotional experience and philosophical statement about value of joy. May your dreams be filled with fluffy creatures whose only purpose is being adorable, with baby Pokémon whose helplessness inspires protection, with round friends whose huggability makes life better, with gentle companions whose presence comforts, with playful partners whose enthusiasm is contagious, and with understanding that cuteness matters not despite being frivolous, but because being frivolous is sometimes exactly what serious world needs when taking break from productivity and from efficiency and from utility maximization to simply appreciate something adorable is active resistance against culture that forgets that joy is valuable and that cute things serve important purpose through making people smile. Thank you for joining this comprehensive journey through cute Pokémon whose designs demonstrate that creating delight is legitimate artistic goal and legitimate life goal when happiness matters and when making world brighter through adding adorable creatures is contribution that pessimism might dismiss, but which experience validates through feeling better after seeing cute thing, proving that cuteness works regardless of whether mechanisms are understood, making cute Pokémon into gifts that keep giving through providing renewable source of joy that repeated exposure doesn't deplete because cuteness remains effective even when familiar, making favorite cute Pokémon into constants that life's changes cannot diminish through remaining adorable regardless of how many times they're seen. Rest peacefully knowing that cute things exist, that adorable Pokémon wait in games and in merchandise and in memories providing comfort whenever needed, that cuteness is legitimate source of happiness, that sophisticated people need not feel embarrassed. Appreciating when joy is valuable regardless of source, that taking time for cute content is self-care rather than procrastination, when mental health benefits from positive stimuli that cuteness provides, and that world is better for having cute Pokémon whose existence makes life sweeter through being concentrated sources of delight, that cynicism cannot diminish, and that age cannot outgrow when cuteness appeals to child in everyone who remembers that happiness doesn't require justification, when feeling good is sufficient reason for engaging with cute things that make feeling good easy. Sweet dreams of adorable companions whose cuteness never fades, of baby Pokémon whose vulnerability inspires tenderness, of round friends whose hugs provide comfort, of loyal partners whose devotion is absolute, of gentle souls whose kindness is genuine, and of understanding that appreciating cuteness is wisdom rather than foolishness, when recognizing that joy matters and that cute things provide joy is insight that serious people sometimes forget in pursuit of important matters that aren't actually more important than happiness, that cuteness delivers reliably and repeatedly, making cute Pokemon into teachers whose lesson is that delight is valuable and that making time for adorable things is living well, rather than wasting time when quality of life includes aesthetic pleasure that cute creatures provide without asking anything in return except attention that appreciation requires. Good night forever, dear friends who understand that cute matters. Sleep among adorable dreams. Rest in knowledge that tomorrow cute Pokemon will still exist, providing joy. Good night.